what did you set out to do in your film?
Well, it's a big question. A big question. I think. Well, first of all, we didn't set out to solve the crime. So if you're about to go and watch this film and you think you're going to find out necessarily, you might, but we didn't set out. We're going to solve the crime of DB Cooper. Given that, I took the point of view that, the FBI couldn't do it in 50 years. So why would a guy from South London manage it? I think what we set out to do was not just tell the story of what happened, which I think is an extraordinary story in itself. I mean, if you're in a pub or a bar with someone and they don't know this story, and a lot of people in the UK don't, and actually I found a lot of people in the US don't necessarily know the story now, and you tell them the bare bones of the story. It's a stormy Thanksgiving night, Thanksgiving Eve. A guy gets on a plane, black suit, black sunglasses, black attaché case, bomb, parachutes, and they're in. But it doesn't sustain for me a whole movie because the actual heist is quite passive. He's polite. He's quite a gentleman about this hijacking. The passengers on the plane have no idea it's happening. So that for me was a key element, obviously, because that's the story. But I was also interested in, okay, what happens afterwards? He gets away. I believe he did get away. So who is he? And then you start to discover all these people that genuinely believe with all their heart and soul, and have dedicated large parts of their life to proving this belief that they know who DB Cooper is. And these people they became more important to me. That for me became the film, the believers and their stories. And it's as simple as that, I think.
So you didn't set out to solve the mystery, but what did you set out to solve?
I didn't set out to solve it. I mean, essentially, I wanted to tell these people's stories. I wanted to discover how much credence their stories had and why they believed so much that they knew who Cooper was, that they believe that it's their ex-husband, their uncle, their transsexual fellow pilot, the friend that they used to room with in army barracks. I wanted to know why they believed so much and what evidence they had. And, there was an investigative element because I wanted to see how they put their story together. We all tell ourselves stories in some way or other. And I was interested why they were telling themselves these stories. Why does Jo Webber believe so vehemently that her ex-husband is DB Cooper? And, that was the film's premise was very simple in that way. It was actually HBO commissioned it because the commissioner, Nancy Abraham, she loved the idea that we sort of walk past, we're cheek by jowl with people that we brush past on sidewalks and in life, not so close these days, obviously, but who carry around with them these sort of extraordinary stories, and we don't know it. For me, it was about unveiling these. For some of these stories, I do think are pretty extraordinary.
Well, you're following 4 different people who believe that they know for sure who the DB Cooper was. And if you follow through with each one of these stories, in a way, circumstantially, they make a lot of sense, right? So you have these 4 different truths.
Yeah.
You have many truths, as is true in life. Why do these people cling on to these constructed truths if they are constructed? Obviously, they can't all be DB Cooper, right? So one of them, 3 are wrong.
Yeah. But, I don't want to get too pretentious about it, but how can all the different religions be the right one? One of them clearly hasn't got the right pathway to this higher being. One of them doesn't quite work, but they all believe they work. So it is a film just as much about belief. but also it's a film about storytelling. We all love good stories, you know, and hopefully you invest yourselves in these people because there are elements that make sense here. Yes, they can't all be true, but that's the beauty, isn't it? That's what the mystery brings us. It's like, you know, we can have our cake and eat it. We can enjoy all of these stories, and, you know, possibly none of them are true. I mean, I'd be upset if none of them were. I mean, personally, speaking from the heart, I'd love Joe Webber's story to be true because it just has so many bits of strange detail in it. It's like, who would go to the trouble to make that up? And in that way, why? I mean, that surely is, you know, stranger than fiction. It's almost the strangeness makes it feel more authentic. But yeah, you're right. They can't all be true. But I think that's one of the beauties of it, is that they're all in play somehow.
Well, it seems to me that there's a little bit of obsession in play here. On the part of many people, including the filmmaker.
Oh yeah, I mean, I cross over. I mean, I cross over the line. I feel. I mean, quite literally at one point where I walk past the camera. But I think it's difficult not to, because it has that tantalizing mystery in it that once you start putting together the pieces, you start to become obsessed. I did.
What is he has sort of he's got a sort of like a D.B. Cooper has sort of Robin Hood like quality. He's like a folk hero to some.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is he?
Well, I think there are several. I mean, it's interesting you use Robin Hood, who is the English. He's about the only English folk hero we've got, really. The only English outlaw that we sort of romanticize. I don't think we really have any others. Whereas in America, you have loads. You've got Bonnie and Clyde, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You know, a lot of people sort of romanticized Al Capone. I mean, you could throw Donald Trump into that list, I guess, as sort of outlaws. But I think, I mean, he's not strictly Robin Hood in that I'm not sure he really gave the money away to the poor, not that we know of, but I think because it's got that daring do element to it. You know, Bruce Smith, one of my favorite characters in the film, who's in the guy in the hut, the little shed in the woods, the little trailer. You know, he's like, I want to be Cooper. He did something extraordinary and got away with it. You know, I mean, I've not really done many extraordinary things with my life. You know, I've not pulled someone out of a river. I've not done anything that's like, wow, that's amazing. That has that sense of adventure. But also, I think because it's perceived, and this might not be quite the right perception, as a sort of gentleman crime. You know, he didn't scream and shout. The passengers didn't even know this was happening. You know, he was very polite. He was very polite as he robbed them of $200,000. He let all the passengers off. He was very polite with Tina, the air hostess. He casually sat there with a bourbon and smoked a few cigarettes. And it was planned out. There's almost a sort of James Bond quality to the way he performs. So I think there is a romance there. I mean, it's like all romance, it's not quite true in that, you know, for the poor flight crew, you know, flying in a huge lump of metal at 10,000 feet with a back door open and possibly a bomb in a briefcase, that's terrifying and traumatic. And I think in the film, there's a moment where you see some of the flight crew get quite emotional, but it has all those elements, even from the sort of 70s Madman nostalgia of the bourbon and the cigarette, that make it feel like a folk hero story. Hey, this is a good guy.
It's also, in a sense, we're talking about people's need to believe in something that is a little more interesting than the truth, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, I was quite jealous of some of these characters. I mean, I sort of wish I had something a bit more interesting to believe in. I'm one of those sort of, you know, modern age, I guess, at the risk of sounding extremely pretentious, sort of existentialists. You know, my meaning is sort of made up on a very ramshackle, ad hoc way on a daily basis. I don't have any certainty of belief, and it's pretty terrifying at times. I sort of envy the characters in my film that they believe in this so much that it gives them almost a sort of emotional bedrock ballast to their life. I mean, this is a bit of a dangerous thing to say. You know, the film I made before was about the Church of Scientology, and there were moments where I'm like, gee, I feel a bit jealous that you've got this, this sort of very obviously peculiar, but at least a belief system. I mean, it makes going to sleep at night and getting up in the morning a lot easier, I would have thought, although I wouldn't personally recommend Scientology for that. But I think believing in a story like this does give your life some. I mean, that's why we buy into stories. I mean, if I go and watch a movie, you know, I feel like even if it's, you know, some deep existential French art house film, for 90 minutes, 2 hours, I'm going to get some sort of coherence in my life, something to focus on. And I think it's as simple as that with these characters. Yeah, I envy them. It's probably why I make films. I'm looking to try and create some sort of meaning out of the chaos. It just doesn't last as long for me.